What's up, YouTube? Today, in this video, we're going to be doing an entire service of the driver front door of my 1969 Lincoln Continental with suicide doors. Stay tuned. Alright, so this is basically how the door is set up, or at least the panel on the door. There's a wooden piece that goes here in the opening of the armrest, and I'll show you that real quick. I've already got a lot of this taken apart, obviously, but this part here, it goes inside of the armrest there, and there's just a couple screws that holds it in. And you can access those through the bottom of the armrest. And if you watched our video where we rebuilt the master switch for this door, then you may have seen some of this already. The switch assembly is held in here with a few screws, and we've got that out right here. And then the missing piece is the switch I got right here because I was testing that out. So we got all of that removed, and then we got the panel off. There's 4 screws down at the bottom. They're really hidden in the carpet, but they're there. And once you get those out, there's a couple of 9mm nuts that holds the door handle on to those 2 studs. And then it's got a little hook on here that goes through that, and when you pull on the handle, it actually pushes or it pulls up on a lever here, which actuates the latch over here. So we took those 2 off, and then at that point I was able to see the back of the door panel, and it's held in a couple spots on both sides by these little metal tangs here, sort of similar to how a modern door panel is held on, but with a slightly different part. And of course there's 2 more here. Had to be very careful with those. And then the next thing we had to do is remove the vacuum lines that go to the door lock switch, because these door locks are vacuum operated. And that was pretty much the only thing we had to do as far as the door panel goes. And then I can show you the vacuum lines. They're all kind of stuck together. I assume that the big one is the vacuum in, and then the other 2 is lock and unlock. The switch just transfers the vacuum from one hose to the other. At least I believe that's how it works. And also we've got the mirror lever here. This was on there, and I believe it was this right here. We had to unscrew this nut to get the mirror lever out, and that of course goes through that hole. So I didn't film any of that, but it's all pretty simple stuff as far as that goes. The armrest has 5 bolts. There's one that was actually missing, but you can see there's a bolt hole, there's another one, there's a couple more down there as well. So we're basically getting inside the door here so that we can do a full service on the parts inside the door, which is going to include pulling out the regulator assembly and greasing up all the tracks, as well as rebuilding the motor. And then we're also going to check for proper function the lock actuator, which is also has vacuum lines connected to it. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Alright, so after much struggle, I finally got this window motor and regulator assembly out of the vehicle. So this track right here, the one on top, is actually held to the window with a few screws, and you can kind of see right down there, that's where one of them goes in. And then there's 4 bolts, 1, 2, 3, and 4, I think, that holds the motor on. It looks like somebody went ahead and drilled their own holes at some point to try to get access to that motor. but I don't know if that was necessarily the best idea. But anyway, I ended up having to use the good old torch here and drill out a couple of them bolts, or those little Phillips screws. So unfortunately I'm going to need to find a couple new screws that look like that. Kind of sucks. Those are a huge pain to get out. But after taking those screws out and the bolt, there was actually one more. I believe it was in that hole right there. Is a small bolt that holds this small bracket here from the motor to the door. I don't know if it's a ground or what, but anyways, we got this thing out. So now we're going to grease up all the tracks. We're going to take the motor off, which I believe we have to take this spring off first, so that's going to be a little bit sketchy. And then after that, we should be able to take the motor apart and see what the inside looks like. And I'm sure it's all gunked up and needs those little bushings inside replaced. So we're going to check that out. Okay, so I just decided to move this to the position where it was the most, or I guess the least spring pressure on it, and then I just stood on it with my feet in both spots, and I just took the bolts out of the motor that way. And this piece did try to spin on me, but I was prepared for it and I had control of it, so that seemed like the easier way for me. Now getting it back together may be a pain, but anyway, there's 3 bolts on the motor that hold it to the regulator, and then there's a final screw that holds the cover on the motor. So I got that off, and take a look at that. Destroyed. Done for. So this motor needs a rebuild kit. So I think we're going to have to get one of those. But first I want to check and make sure that it actually works by supplying it power. Alright, so we got our 3 pieces cleaned up. We got the inside of this cleaned out to the best of my ability, and I put a little bit of fresh grease in it. So now we're going to take this. We got all the teeth cleaned out reasonably well. We're going to put this on there just like that. And I've already kind of messed around with it a little bit, but it's kind of hard to tell which way it's turning. So I'm going to put this in there just so I can tell for sure which way it's turning. Alright, so we got some wires hooked up here, and I put a line on that white gear so we can tell which way it's turning. So I got a battery over here, and we're going to do positive and negative, and it's going to spin one way, and then I'm literally just going to switch them around, even though, you know, it's both black. We're going to switch them on the battery, and it's going to spin the other way. So that's one way. We're spinning counterclockwise. Look at the battery. Show the battery. So we got it this way. Now I'm going to swap them. Now go back to the motor. Now it's going clockwise. So we've now proven that this 54-year-old window motor still works exactly like it should, and it was just those little bushings inside that crumbled up and caused it not to work properly. So now we just need to get some new bushings, and this should be like a brand new motor again. Alright, so I went up to O'Reilly's to get a new bushing kit for this motor, and they didn't have it in stock, but it'll be in about an hour and a half. So in the meantime, went ahead and hit this slider with some white lithium grease. I'll probably clean off the edge of this gear and put some regular grease on that. And then I also hit the scissor spot right there in the middle with some grease as well. One thing that kind of sucks is one of these wheels that looks like this is kind of seized up and not really spinning because I had to torch it. It still slides, so I think I'm going to leave it alone, but it is kind of unfortunate that it's slightly melted. But with all that grease and the fact that it's not totally destroyed, it should be totally fine. So we did that, and then also here inside the door I've got the door latch lubricated. You can see that's when you try to open the door with the latch from the outside. The inside one does the exact same thing. And then the lock mechanism, we also lubricated all around there to the best of my ability, every moving part. So there's that. And then I also, which you may not be able to see, but this track right here is what the window glass actually slides up and down in, and there's no need to actually remove that, but we went ahead and lubricated that as well. And this is just holding the window up for now, but I could tell immediately it was a noticeable difference in how easy the glass slides up and down after I did that, so it's definitely a good thing. Now I've got the 2 vacuum lines pulled off of our lock actuator, and I'm gonna go get my Mighty Vac pump, and we're gonna test that to see if it works. And I already know that the wing window works and the motor is working great on it, so I kind of hesitate to tear that apart, especially since this door panel's not all that difficult to remove. But then again, another part of me wants to just go over everything while I'm in here, so I'm not sure what I'm gonna do as far as that motor. You can kind of see it in there. There's the bottom of it, that cylinder shape. One thing I am gonna do is put some grease on this gear though, just to make sure everything's good to go with that. But I really hesitate to pull that motor out if it's working fine, especially with me not being super familiar with this particular window style. I've never worked on a wing window at all, let alone a power one, so that could be somewhat of a pain to get out, but maybe not too, who knows. It's the original one, you can tell, auto light, made in USA, baby. So let's keep it moving. All right, sorry for the leaf blower noise in the background, but I got my Mighty Vac tool hooked up, and we've got it hooked up to the top part of the lock actuator. And if we apply some vacuum, you can see that it went up. So now I'm gonna switch it to the bottom here, and then we'll apply a vacuum there, and then it goes down. So that is a good sign. Our vacuum operated door lock actuator is still working as well after 54 years. Right, and since we're doing a total driver front door servicing, this particular handle here was a little loose, and so after we got the car, I popped this off thinking that I was going to be able to just tighten up that screw, but unfortunately the nut is on the back, and there's not a whole lot you can do about that. So I need to put this on. Since I got that tight now, I'm gonna have to probably do the same on the other one, but I got a couple command strips and cut them to size, and then now we should be able to put this piece right back in there where it goes. All right, and now we got that in there, got the other one tightened up without even having to take that off, and then we got this one pressed in pretty nicely so it looks like it's supposed to again, and then that door pull should be good, because that is, after all, what we will use to close the door. Then again, I think the armrest has a deal by the door handle as well, but this was the intended method of closing the door, and now that handle is nice and tight again. I remember on my old 91 Mercury Grand Marquis, which was actually my first car, I had an issue very similar to that. So that was a Ford problem for at least 20 years, maybe 25 years, with these loose door pulls there. We got that one nice and straightened out. All right, so my theory on this lock switch was correct. I applied vacuum right here to the middle, and I'm not going to show it because it's really hard to do with both hands, or without both hands, but you apply vacuum to the middle, and then you actuate the switch up or down, and then the vacuum should go down to 0 on the gauge, because you're releasing the vacuum from inside here and allowing it to escape through the top of the bottom. However, I will show you this. Whenever I pump it up, and I got this in there pretty solidly, it's actually leaking. So I think we're going to have to take this apart, otherwise we're going to have a vacuum leak. And what's kind of crazy is, like, when you have a vacuum leak, that can obviously cause your engine to run lean. And so I just can't imagine the engine running lean because of a lock switch. That just sounds insane. We're gonna try to take these flathead screws off, see if there's some kind of seal inside of there, and see if we can stop this thing from leaking. All right, so I got this thing apart, and the switch is actually held to the door with this guy here. I don't know what's going on with that. Interesting. I don't know why that's like that. Must just not be in there good enough. Anyways, I got this apart. There's a couple springs inside there, and those springs sit inside here. And there's not a rupture in the rubber, but these little valves in here pop out. And when you move the switch, you can barely see it, maybe. See how it kind of pushes that rubber up like that? And then it just popped back in. You could barely see it. Well, on this side, I don't know if you guys can see that or not, but there's a shiny spot. There's a hole in that rubber there. And I don't know how to take this apart. I don't know, based on the design of this hinge on the switch, they did not make this designed to come apart, unfortunately. So we may actually just have to go ahead and buy a new switch, unfortunately, because there is a hole in the rubber on this one. Alright, so I was able to get that other motor down, the one that controls this. It's actually the 4 bolts that hold the cover on are the same 4 bolts that holds it to this sort of brass colored bracket mechanism there. And this one actually looked incredibly clean on the inside, and also doesn't even have those little bushing things inside of it. So they just didn't put that safety mechanism, I guess, on this particular setup. So I'm just going to re-grease the motor. I cleaned up the gear real good. That one looks like this. And then the cover goes over it. And then there is a washer as well on there. I don't remember where I set that washer. Should be over here somewhere. Oh, it's right here. Right there. And I believe that the dip in the washer fits into the dip in the cover, just like that. So I'm going to go ahead and put this back together. Alright, so we got the motor back on. As you can see, it was kind of a pain to line that cover up and still keep that washer inside there in place. It's a little bit tricky to get it back together, but I'd rather do it the way I had to do it than have to mess with any of this mechanism right there. That looks like kind of a pain. Anyway, we got the battery hooked up. We got a key turned on. Window is definitely working like it's supposed to. We got these switches rebuilt here. So this is working exactly how it should be, and maybe with the engine running and the alternator working, they might even be slightly faster than this. So we are just about done servicing almost everything inside this door here. Well, came back up here to O'Reilly's, and they were supposed to have them apart at 5 o'clock. It's 5:50 now. Still not here. Had to reorder it again for tomorrow. But that's alright, because I'm ready to sit down and relax for a bit. Basically been working on this door all day. Now granted, there's a lot of stuff going on inside this door, so I expect it to take some time. Then when you have to torch and drill out screws, that only adds more to the time. So I didn't expect this to be done in an hour or two. So not a big deal. We'll come back and we'll get the rest of it going tomorrow when I can get those bushings. The motor for the main window is about the only thing we have left to do, and then we need to get that spring back in place properly, and then we can reinstall the regulator, reconnect the window, and then kind of clean up our door panel and everything and put that back together. And then of course we're also going to need a new door lock switch, so stay tuned. We're going to keep moving. So here we are the next day, finally got that part, and it actually came with more stuff than I thought it would, Comes with the new metal gear and the new plastic gear, and then the most important part, these little bushings or whatever. I knew it came with that, but I didn't know that it came with a little bit of grease. Comes with this little O-ring that I have no idea what that goes to, because I don't remember having an O-ring. And then we even got a new backing and a new seal on the back there, so that's really awesome. I'm going to go ahead and put this in the motor, and then we'll test it out. Alright, so we finally got everything inside. You can see the new bushings in there. It's kind of hard to get those two gears lined up with the bushings in there, but I finally got it. So now I'm going to fill it up with just a little more grease, and then I'm going to put this cover on. Alright, so we got the motor on there finally using a vise, and had a helper help me bolt it on while I held that thing in the right position against the spring pressure. Definitely do be extremely careful if you're working on one of these, because if you slip up, that thing can really hurt you. So definitely be careful, because that's a heavy spring. So anyway, since I've been touching it a lot, I might just hit a last little spray in all these tracks with the Watt lithium grease, and then should be able to install. Got some regular grease on the gear, so it should be pretty much ready to install back into the door. Alright, so with a little help from my son, I was able to get the 4 bolts lined up in the regulator, so we've got that whole thing reinstalled. Got a little bit more grease on there. One thing I forgot to mention is this little roller here. There's another slide that actually bolts into the door. I got it right here. It's got a couple studs and nuts on it, so you definitely want to go ahead and lubricate that as well. Another tip, if you had to hold off on it overnight like I did, you can actually put your vice grips on the window track inside, and that'll keep the window from falling, while also enabling you to close the door. So I'm going to get that other track put in. We're going to make sure it lines up in the same spots with the nuts, and then the next thing I'm going to do is get this plugged back in, the motor, make sure it's routed through this loom here, and then I got to get this bolt and this bolt tightened up, because that one is the bracket for the motor I was talking about, and this one just holds this little wire loom, and that one was actually loose already, but it needs to be loosened anyway so that you can pull the connector through, because it's a little tight without it. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. Another thing I forgot to mention is there is a bolt right here, and that holds this track in place, and I did have to loosen it. It's probably best if you just remove it completely, but that's the front window track, and that's got that little felt stuff inside of it, so I didn't lubricate that, because that should basically act as a lubricant slash silencer anyways. But you will have to take this loose to fit the motor and regulator between here and the door. So now I've got the scissor of the regulator installed into this other track, and we've got it aligned up exactly where it was before, where the nut completely covers the scratches on the door there. So we got that tightened up. Now on to the next step, which is going to be to get some new screws for this so that I can reattach the window glass. All right, so we got our motor wiring rerouted through this little wire holder, got the bolt tightened up, got that bolt tightened up, and now I'm going to go ahead and plug the motor back in, test it to see if it works. And I put some dielectric grease inside of the connector, and if you're doing this, I'd probably recommend that you do that as well. This damn hose is in the way, but partially because they're old and could be corroded, but also these things are very difficult to connect back together just due to the type of connectors that they are. So I think that grease will help them plug back in, and also help you get it apart next time if you need to. Alright, so we've got the window reinstalled, and I got some new Allen bolts. You can see a couple of them in there. And so those should be good and won't be as hard to remove and replace as those old stripped out Phillips ones that we had. And so now I want to mention that right in here is a bolt. We'll turn the light on. And right above that bolt, if I can get in there, I'll show you. Yeah, right above that bolt is a little hook deal. The camera's not focusing, dang it. There we go. Okay, so that hook will meet up with a stopper on the door itself. And then there's another one on this side. You can just barely see it right there. So I would advise not to mess with those at all, because I took those out initially thinking that that's how to get the window separated, and that is not at all how to get it separated. When this door opens, or excuse me, when the window goes down, if the door is closed, as the window goes down, the gap between this window and the B pillar gets more and more as it goes down, and it comes back up like that. So essentially it needs to be rolled down ever so slightly, because that's where it meets up with this weather stripping, and that's what keeps it in alignment with the B pillar. So had I never took those off, I'd probably be fine, but I had to spend a little bit of extra time loosening and tightening those up so the stoppers stop it in the correct place, and we can have the proper clearance from the window, because it was kind of, you probably can't see it, but it was starting to scuff that up a little bit because it was touching, so I definitely needed to readjust it. So anyway, we've got the window working properly, as I did with it in a few scenes ago. I took the battery, hooked up to the connector. I got a couple alligator clip deals here, and I was able to touch on the battery, and it rolls up and down very, very smoothly with direct battery power to it. So now I just got to figure out that switch issue so I can get it to roll up and down with the switch properly, and we'll be pretty much all finished up. All right, so I got this armrest here, and I figured while I got everything apart, I'll just take these two screws off, pop the bulb out. It's one of those bulbs where there's a metal deal on both sides, and you push the bulb into the metal clips. And those are a little rusty on the inside, and I didn't really clean them up or anything, just because it's kind of a tight area to get into, and I don't want to spread them out too far. But I did add a little bit of that bulb grease, tune-up, dielectric. It's all the same stuff. And I kind of greased it up a little bit to hopefully prevent it from getting any more rusty and keeping a good contact. That bulb was working, and the bulb is still fine, and I'm not really interested in replacing a whole bunch of stuff that doesn't need to be replaced. But since we're in here giving everything a good once over, I thought I'd at least take care of that as well. Don't want anything to go overlooked. The other thing I'm going to do is this leather here is kind of peeling up a little bit, so I'm going to try to pull down some more on it, and then maybe put a staple or two in there so that it will stay in place a little better and it's not bulging out from behind that wood. You can kind of see on the passenger side there how it's kind of bulging out from behind the wood, and so it's doing that a little bit on this side as well, and I'd like to try to resolve that to the best of my ability while I'm in here. Right, so I was going to staple this, and that didn't work, and so then I was going to glue it, but I didn't really feel like that was going to work either. What really needs to happen, unfortunately, is that this needs to be completely reupholstered by a professional. And unfortunately, I am not a professional upholstery guy. So what I did was I stretched it back as much as I could, and I put a couple nails in it. And that actually held because it went into the hard plastic. And then I put a little piece of tape over that so that when the wood trim goes in here, it doesn't show the shiny nails that I put in it. And then the bottom was kind of bulging out a little too, but I can't really flex this up that good. So I put a couple more pieces of tape right here and let them overlap, hit it with a heat gun so it's nice and sticky on there. And then whenever you put the wood trim in there, because that tape overlaps, it doesn't quite look like it's bulging out as bad anymore. And so It's definitely not perfect, but it's a lot better than it was, and I'm happy with that for now until if and when we take it to an upholstery shop. And I also got it all wiped down and cleaned up as well. Alright, so since we're going to paint this car black eventually, the original color was red. I wanted everything to look proper once the car's all finished up. And the inside of the door panel, or the door behind the panel rather, it never usually has the best of paint anyway. It's pretty flat. And I put on a glossy black paint. You can even see myself, or see me in it rather. And so I think that'll be decent enough for the inside of the door panel there. I just put a trash bag in each one of those holes and painted around it. And then I put some cardboard between the door and the window. And I got a very slight amount of overspray right there, but I cleaned that off, and I'll probably clean it up real good again later on when we're closer to that point. But I think it looks a lot better with black, especially with the door panel off. If someone pulls it off in the future when I don't own the car, it's just going to look proper to have everything black. Now, to do that same thing in the trunk will be no fun at all, but this door was relatively easy to do. We're still waiting on the vacuum switch, and we are going to get some glue and a couple clamps to fix the leather on that armrest, and then we'll be able to put all this back together. Okay, so we got the door all vacuumed out now, got the shop vac out, figured might as well, while everything's apart, get that taken care of as well. And then I got a roll of this butyl tape, or butyl rope, and kind of spread it around the edge of the door there in a nice even bead as much as I could. And that's going to put our new vapor barrier on. This door actually didn't have one. I might be able to show you what the, yeah, this is kind of what the original one looked like. And they're all kind of torn up and sort of water damage at the bottom. And like I said, the driver front door that I'm working on here doesn't even have one to begin with. So I got some of this sort of material because I figured that'd be pretty good insulation. Might put some more noise reduction into the vehicle. And I basically used the passenger side one that was there as a sort of a stencil, if you will, for this one. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this on and see if it sticks. All right, I think that worked out pretty well. We got pretty much all of our screw holes and our door handle nuts and studs sticking through. Got a little thing for our mirror and our vacuum and our electric, and it's actually sticking really, really well. This sticks out a little because there's not a hole right there, and I just kind of lined it up around the hole. Plus that'll make it easier to kind of get started if you have to pull it off again, but that is sealed up quite well. That stuff works great. So if you guys are ever doing a vapor barrier at home, definitely use the butyl tape. You can use whatever material you want. I just thought I'd give this stuff a try because it seemed like it would insulate well as adding extra noise reduction for the vehicle. So now that we got that done, I'm still waiting on that vacuum switch for the door panel, and then we can go ahead and put that back on as well. All right, so we got that new switch. Just went ahead and popped that bad boy into the door panel. And then I slid the panel on, and we were actually missing a couple of the clips. I didn't realize that. There's here, let me show you, it'll be easier. On the door panel, there's these little, oh my god, that was a wasp in there. That freaked me out. Sorry YouTube, I'm allergic to wasps. That scared the shit out of me. Anyway, there's these little square holes there in the door panel, and there's those little clips that go in them, and I had to borrow a couple from this door temporarily. I'm going to order some more on eBay. I found them. They're only like 10 bucks for a package of them. So we've got all the clips on this door now. Another thing I realized in the process of doing this is that these are actually special door panels, and I didn't realize that. This car has the special town car interior, I believe, because I saw some other door panels that did not look as nice as these that were on another Continental. And then also, if you look at the seats, the way that the stitching is, it matches the door panels perfectly. So I didn't know that until doing a little bit of research. So anyway, I also have the switch issue all sorted. Oh, that's upside down. And I went ahead and screwed this bad boy back into the armrest. So now I'm going to go ahead and reinstall the armrest onto the door. And I'm also going to borrow a screw from another door, because I got two other door panels apart as well. And we're gonna put all the screws that are supposed to be there in it, and then when I need some for the other doors, I'll just have to get them from the hardware store. Alright, so we got that armrest back on there, and got the door cleaned up, got the window clean a little bit. So we are pretty much all finished up with this door. Just a recap of everything we've done here. On the inside of the door, we rebuilt the motor that makes the main window go up and down. We greased the tracks for it. We greased the latch and lock mechanism. We've also greased the outer latch mechanism. We also checked the lock actuator for proper function. We checked the vacuum lines within the door to the lock and the lock switch. We also sort of fixed the bulging of the armrest. We cleaned up the door panel really well. We fixed the door pull by tightening this up, and we put this little cover back on there. We replaced the leaking lock switch. In a separate video, we rebuilt this entire master switch assembly. And what else did we do here? We also painted the door. We replaced the vapor barrier inside of the door. And I hope I'm not forgetting anything, but I think that is pretty much a recap of everything that we've done inside here. Oh, we also re-greased the motor that controls the power wing window as well. So everything except for the exterior paint on this door has been totally serviced and essentially rehabilitated. This door is essentially in perfect condition again, with the exception of the exterior paint, which we will of course get to one day. And for those who may be new to the channel and you're wondering how this happened, the vehicle actually slightly caught on fire when my old grill exploded. But if you want to check that out, I think I got a short on it where I talk about it, if you want to scroll down on the channel and check that out. But otherwise, we are all finished up. We also put some dielectric grease in this light bulb housing where the bulb connects, as well as in all of the connectors as well, to try to prevent corrosion. And that's going to be the end of the video for today, guys. Hope you all enjoyed. This has been a long time coming. This is one of the first things we've actually put back together on this car, believe it or not. We've only really took stuff apart. I mean, we did put a gas tank and a fuel line and a couple other things on it, but for the most part, we've only took stuff apart. So it's nice to have something put back together and totally finished as far as that particular project goes. If you're liking these kind of videos, I got a whole playlist of a bunch more of them if you want to catch up on the project, and there will of course be many more coming up soon. Please like the video and leave a comment below, as that helps me out quite a bit. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel, where you can see this whole car get rebuilt from start to finish. Otherwise, this is Andy signing off, and I will see you next time.